huge congratulations with the film. I mean, this is such an emotional story on so many levels, and I wondered, how on earth did you become acquainted with the school and the story of these guys in the first place?
I mean, we first were lucky enough to be doing some charity filming for an awards, and some people had done some amazing work and built a small school in Nepal, and we first went there to film that story. We kept in touch with those people, and then a couple of years later we found they were supporting this school. We didn't know why. They explained what it was, sending children home, and we asked why they needed to do that, how long had they been away, and when they said 10 years, 12 years, it just blew our minds. We had to find out more.
And when you were first approached the school, were they reticent, or were they sort of open to a foreign film crew coming in and finding out more about it?
I think because we had the connection with the charity that funded the going home trip, who were also at that time like funding teachers' salaries and things like that, they were really open to us. That kind of opened the doors. And they're really, grateful and pleased that their story is being told to the world, because they struggle, and so it's really nice. The more people that know about this story, the more people maybe could help in future. So for them, I think they always saw it as a great thing, yeah.
And the story centres really about three main characters. Now, this wouldn't be a traditional kind of audition, and all of these children in the school have got a story to tell. So how did you whittle down isolating which of the three people that were going to be ideal to tell the story?
We did effectively a casting in a way. I mean, we do charity sort of fundraising video as well as a good exercise, because we knew they needed some support for that, and did some interviews to do with that. Got all the kids to tell us where they came from, when was the last time they saw their families, where in the country they're from, get their stories, and a lot of them are quite extreme. Some saw their parents every few years, or maybe had a phone call once a year, and these guys, who happen to also be the most charismatic and amazing individuals, had been without any contact with their family for literally up to 12 years.
And I think that's the core of the emotion. There's so many kind of thoughts that these kids go through, feelings of rejection and anticipation. And so how important was it for you to connect to that emotional core of the film?
That was crucial. I mean, that was the difference between us having a film or not having a film, really. And so a big part of the casting process was not only which children had been separated, it was also, were they willing to open up to us? Would they trust us enough? Would they be willing to go into those really kind of sad parts of themselves, which they did over time? And that's why we chose these particular three. And yeah, going into that deeper thing, because when we first met the children, everyone would say to us, "Oh, I'm the lucky one," because they are told by the school, that they're lucky. And that was kind of like they'd repeat it by rote. But it was only as we got to know them that we found out that actually, beneath that, really, they're all feeling like their parents threw them away and like there's something wrong with them. And so we really wanted to go into that and explore that side of it too.
I think the other reality that came about from their trips home is how many times they can be told intellectually they're the lucky ones, they're there for a reason, they feel that pain, and it's not until they go home that they understand why. They have to see it with their own eyes. They come from a place of great hardship. It looks beautiful, but as we learn in the film, it's not a simple story, and they only then realise why they've been sent away and effectively forgive their parents for it.
And what's interesting as well for me was that there was just such a stark contrast from the children, even though they were sort of 16, going away to meet their families kind of full of enthusiasm, to actually effectively adults. When they come back, you really saw that maturity in that small space of time, didn't you?
Yeah, the going home trip, it changes them enormously. Beforehand, yeah, they're children basically, they're like hurt children. And then going home, they not only heal the wounds with the parents, but also I think seeing the way that their parents live, it really transforms their perspective. And I mean, it transformed our perspective too. We've been changed by the experience as well. I think when you see people who are living in such tough conditions, it really makes you look at life and think about what you've got and be grateful for what you've got. And that was true for us, it's true for the children. And so they very much came back as adults who understood why they'd been sent away. They understood their position in the world, why they were in that place in the world, and also then had that responsibility that they wanted to help, feeling of responsibility and wanting to make a difference for the villages.
And what's interesting as well, I imagine when you start to make a film like this, you have to have a certain amount of structure and know what your kind of desired goal is for the film. Yet as we go on this journey, you also have to be open to the eventualities that are going to happen. Some of the things that you just couldn't have planned for. Was that kind of the remarkable part of this journey as well?
There are a lot of surprises, and we often can romanticise, the village life or the story. Essentially, we imagine this story arc. They're going to meet their families. It's going to be a big hug. Everything's going to be okay. And it's a rocky path. One of the three really doesn't get what he's struggling for, and their family is difficult. You know, you can't just rekindle a mother-to-child relationship after 10, 12 years just like that. It's complex and there's a lot of issues, so they really struggle, but they are, you know, do it with such grace. That's what's so inspiring, how they handle it. They're so young, but got something to teach us.
And you talk about a rocky path. The terrain that they actually travel on is rough. So when you're travelling with these people, how logistically, how do you plan for that? You're going into extreme cold conditions. Do you have to consider the kind of kit that you're taking that are going to? What can you speak to us a little bit more about the kind of logistics of planning this kind of journey?
I think the biggest thing really was the fact that they were off-grid. There was no electricity, so we weren't able to charge any cameras. So that influenced what cameras we could take. We'd only take cameras that were small enough to be able to be powered by solar chargers, and we carried solar chargers. And then also everything got very dirty and dusty, you know, and had to be carried on a donkey. So it was really like robust or you know, or we'd carry them some of the time, but some of the time the path was so dangerous that we couldn't film, so it would have to be on the donkey. It was really, really tough. The journey was really tough, and actually the toughest moments of the journey, I think, apart from Nima's journey, which he managed to film brilliantly in the snow, that climb, but there were other parts of the journey that were perhaps, you know, almost as tough, that we just couldn't film because it was too dangerous, you know, where like the path had been washed away by rainfall, and so we had to like ford through a river. And you know, those rivers were like icy cold, really like torrential rivers. So if we'd slipped, we would have been washed away and killed. So there were quite a few like death-defying moments. And because we were on like quite a small budget, you know, we didn't have satellite phones or anything like that. It was a very, very, very kind of risky. In a way, we travelled in the same way that the villagers travel, and not in the way that a film crew would normally travel. Yeah.
It's probably worth saying that anyone who does a trip to this sort of altitude from here, you know, this is Everest Base Camp, the highest pass that Nima has to travel to go to home, and he's in a pair of jeans and a pair of 40-pound boots. If you know anyone who's done Everest Base Camp, they prep. Boy, do you hear about it. They're in all the gear. They got all the stuff. They got a satellite phone. They got medevac. You know, helicopter if need be. None of that. You know, just not the budget there for that, for them even to do the trip. So it is properly dangerous. You know, there's mortal danger as well as the emotional difficulty of it is actual, you know, serious challenge.
And for me, I took away from the film, and thank you for this, is it's such a message of empowerment. And I just wondered what else that you've got from making this film. What have you taken away?
It's really changed my perspective on life massively. Like, I think I am more grateful for what I have. You know, there's a line in the film that one of the kids says, you know, you should not always expect more, you should be grateful for what you've got. And it's definitely had that effect, I think, on both of us. And then also, having done that journey, I'm just much more able to cope with physical things, like dirt doesn't bother me anymore, you know, things don't work, doesn't bother me, coffee's cold, doesn't bother me. Just like much more easygoing, basically.
Yeah. I think for me it's just attitude. You know, we get in a grump about the littlest things. You know, has your Amazon delivery happened tomorrow, today? You get annoyed, you know, as your gin and tonic being served to you on the plane. This is ridiculous. You know, it's embarrassing, but so useful for us to have this other reference point. These kids have had such a hard set of cards dealt to them, and yet they don't have a hard heart, they don't have a closed heart, they're not in a grumpy, you know, they're open-hearted, generous, spiritual, kind-hearted people, and that's the inspiration for me. Why we want to make the film. I show it to my own children and showed it in a school yesterday, and I'm sure every one of those is inspired to basically behave a bit better and be grateful for what they got.